I was looking for a different book with rain in the title when I mistakenly checked out Small Rain by Garth Greenwell. This book just might be the best mistake I've ever made. Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop, spoiler-free shop for all things audiobook. Small Rain by Garth Greenwell came out in 2024, and to my surprise, it's received a lot less acclaim than I would expect. I think this book is worthy of a variety of awards, and it has won a few, but not as many as I would hope. It was on the Morning News Tournament of Books long list for 2025, and it won the PEN/Faulkner Award for Fiction in 2025. But that's kind of it. I haven't seen this book covered in a lot of places, and again, I myself stumbled upon it. So this is probably a book that many of you have not heard of, although I'm super excited if there are some of you out there who have. I think this is one of the best books I've read all year, and it's definitely up there on the most beautiful books I've ever read list. The novel is set during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I have to say, I have a little bit of PTSD when I read books about pandemics. Even books like Station 11 that were written before the pandemic kind of just make me twitch a little bit. It brings me right back to all of the fear and unsettled feeling and unknown feeling that we all felt during COVID-19, and I don't always feel like I want to go back there. Small Rain, however, made me feel like I was okay to go there. It's difficult, and it's set in that very beginning part of the COVID-19 pandemic where no one knew what was going on and everything was fear-based and people were totally afraid to go to the doctor for anything other than COVID. And there's something about it that right away I felt pulled to, even though I would tell you I don't like books about pandemics. The pandemic setting in this story is actually really integral to the part because the book deals a ton with isolation. The basic plot follows a man who becomes ill during the pandemic, and he's ill in a way that he cannot deny that he has to go to the hospital. He fights it as long as he can, and ultimately he has to go. So you deal with all of the trepidation that leads up to getting to the hospital, but then all of the way things are really different in the hospital, plus all of the ways that just being in the hospital is different and alters your life and your patterns. Our protagonist has no name in the story, only the nicknames that his partner, Elle, has given him. And we follow him essentially as he decides that he needs to go into the hospital, and we stay with him through his journey in the hospital. It's a really serious period of isolation. In fact, when he is allowed visitors, he's allowed one, and only for a very short time during the day. So other than the couple of times that his partner Elle is able to come to the hospital to see him, he's by himself with the exception of the medical staff. It's extremely isolating, and it's a really harrowing situation for him. Much of the story is the protagonist reflecting on his situation and the moments in his life that have gotten him to this point. There are lots of stories and vignettes and little asides that he goes down, and you might say to yourself, why would I want to read a book where the main plot is mostly someone musing about things? But that's exactly what makes this book beautiful. For example, there's a moment where he sees a sparrow on his windowsill, and he begins to think to himself about a poem that he read about a sparrow. And he remembers a few lines from that poem, and then he begins to think about how the author of that poem, or the poet who wrote it, came up with those ideas, and what did he see when he looked at a sparrow that our protagonist is not seeing now? And what is our protagonist seeing now that relates to what the poet saw when he wrote the poem? He goes on for a long time about this sparrow and the poet who wrote about a sparrow, but it's beautiful, and I just fell into it. The world fell away while I listened. His internal monologue and small vignettes really do come together to give you a full picture of the situation, who he is, how he's gotten to this point, and why we should care, quite honestly. The story feels deeply personal, and I actually did some research and found out that Garth Greenwell was inspired to write this story because of something that happened to him. Now, the book is not autobiographical, but it really feels like the details in the story come from personal experience. It's a beautifully written book, but you know Garth Greenwell has had at least something related of an experience, because there's just no way he could capture all of the details that he does if he hadn't been through something at least a little similar himself. Speaking of Garth Greenwell, he narrates the book himself as well. Now, personally, when I see that an author is also the narrator, I sometimes get a little nervous. I'm not really sure why, though, because most of the time I have found that the authors make great narrators. I'm thinking of people like Jonathan Edward Durham and Neil Gaiman and Philip Pullman, who often narrate their own books, and they do a fantastic job. Now, Garth Greenwell was perfect. He brought so much authenticity to this narration, and there's something really comforting as a listener knowing that what I am hearing the way the author intended, because it's the author saying it. This book is full of keen observations and tiny, tiny details, but there's also a lot of reflection in this book. There's reflection on the human condition in many ways, the fragility of the human body, the importance of our health, the toll that isolation can take on us, and the need for human companionship. There is so much reflected upon in this book that is relatable, even if this character for you is not someone you relate to. The feeling of listening to this book reminded me of a couple other books that I've listened to and how those books made me feel that I think a lot more people will know. The first I think of is Achilles by Madeline Miller. When I was listening to that book, I felt like everything fell away, and it was just so stunning, the writing. So I didn't want it to end, and I was living in a fairy tale world. I also felt that way about Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. You can tell Ocean Vuong is a poet in the way that he writes. Yes, it's prose in that book, but it feels poetic, and Garth Greenwell is no different. So if you enjoyed either one of those books, I think you'll find this writing holds up in caliber, and it's impressive stuff. I find when a book is a 5-star read for me, I don't pay attention to anything else. The world falls away when I listen, and I'm just immersed in the world of the story. Sometimes that happens because the writing is beautiful, sometimes it's a really funny and engaging plot, and other times it's because something just grabs me and I relate so hard that I don't want to think about anything else until that book is over. This book for me was a 5-star read where I was immersed in the world of this nameless man and everything that he was going through. I was on the edge of my seat with him in his health crisis. It takes profound vulnerability to awaken gratitude, and in this story, our nameless protagonist is so vulnerable and everything is at stake. And it reminds us how a crisis, while it may not be our favorite thing to go through, often teaches us a ton and reminds us about what's important. This book serves as that kind of reminder, and I think it's the sort of thing that we all need from time to time. I think if you feel like you need a reminder about what's important in this lifetime, then Small Rain should be something you pick up immediately. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion. But thanks for listening to mine. You're not going to be disappointed with this one.